And here to weigh in on all of this, Fox News senior judicial analyst and best-selling author, Judge Andrew Napolitano. I have so many questions for you. I don't know where to start.
Let's go.
Okay, let's start with the revisions made today. You and I know the arguments that were made against the original order. Does this resolve those issues?
It does in part. So there's two categories of judicial objection to the original order. One is there was no reason given in the original order for the selection of the 7 countries. How did they address that? They reduced it to 6, and they gave a summary, a non-classified summary of classified information about the likely dangers posed from each of those 6 countries from whom immigrants have been banned. That is clearly enough to show a rational basis, which is what the legal standard is, as you know, to justify this. Second part of the judicial objection is a little bit more troublesome. Second part, the judges called this a sort of masked anti-Muslim ban, and they based that on some of the more incendiary things that candidate Trump and some of his surrogates said during the campaign, things that President Trump doesn't say anymore. So the issue and the challenge for the drafters of this was to remove religious references in this. So the first one had exemptions for persecuted Christians and Jews. This has no exemptions, so there's no mention of religiosity. There's no mention of any religion tests at all. Will that pass muster? I don't know. If you find judges who think that what candidate Trump said can impale President Trump, it will not pass muster. If you find judges who believe that what the president now says he means, it will pass muster, because all of the benefit of the doubt is to go to the president on this and not to his challengers. The president is charged with securing the borders.
Okay. Do you think, like I do, that this is going to go right back into the courts? We've heard from the ACLU and other groups today saying it's the same thing in a different package. That's their estimation of it. I think what will happen is they'll probably go through the court system. You'll maybe get different circuit court rulings, maybe in opposition. This thing ends up at the Supreme Court. I mean, is that the end game of how this thing was drafted, knowing it's probably going to be 9 people?
Okay, that's a great question. There are a couple of potential end games. As our colleague John Roberts just pointed out, one of the purposes of rescinding the old is to undercut the 48 lawsuits that have been filed against the president. This won't automatically undercut them. The Justice Department will have to move to dismiss those. I think all of those motions will be granted. Then some new cases will be filed. They won't necessarily be filed before the same courts. You won't necessarily get the same judges. You may, for example, get the Third Circuit, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, rather than the Ninth, where you'll get a different view of how this should be treated. So the first goal is to find a circuit court that will side with the president. If that doesn't work, they expect that Judge Gorsuch will be Justice Gorsuch by the time this reaches the Supreme Court. There's no guarantee as to how he'll go. He's not a rubber stamp of the president, but he has a mindset closer to the president to break the likely 4-4 tie on the president's Supreme Court.
That they would get now. Yeah, and it's interesting because you know this court has done a lot, including Justices Kagan and Sotomayor, the President Obama's own nominees. They've ruled against him on executive power, so we'll see how they feel about it.
Another hope they may have is that Justice Kagan recuses herself because her involvement in these very issues when she was the Solicitor General of the United States. If that happens, score an extra vote for the president.
Well, you know there are big cases she didn't recuse on that people were very critical of, so I won't hold my breath on that. But you make an excellent point, as you always do, Judge.
Always a pleasure, Shannon.